Hey there, everyone. I just want to let you know that my book, Mastering Traditional Astrology, is now out and ready to be purchased. You can buy yourself a copy on Amazon.com and let me know down below in the comment section what your experience of reading the book is like. So, the question is, why should we study horary astrology first? This is something I believe with every fiber of my being should be the actual approach to teaching traditional astrology. And actually, even before learning horary astrology first, I think that all students of astrology need to have an understanding of the foundations of classical astrology. A fun fact is that I was going to name this book Mastering Traditional Astrology Foundations of Classical Astrology. But somewhere within the final months of publication, I decided that nobody would ever buy a book with a name as boring as that. So I changed the name to Mastering Traditional Astrology, and I think it's been working out very well for us. Now, in general, students need to understand the foundations of classical astrology because the foundations of classical astrology are the foundations of all astrology. And if you want to be versatile and able to move amongst the various branches of astrology with stability and ease, you have to be able to understand the roots of all of those systems. So even before learning horary astrology, I teach my students the foundations of classical astrology. Once again, we have that course coming up in September 2023, September 16th, 2023 to be exact. But I teach my students the foundations of classical astrology so that they can know how astrology is built, how astrology is structured. And people who've been practicing astrology for forever and ever take FOCA, the foundations of classical astrology, and they're really shocked at how much more there is to learn because everything has a reason for being within the structure of classical astrology. The houses have a reason for being, the signs have a reason for being, the planets have their reason for being. And when we know that, it allows us to interact with astrology in a more profound way. Now, after we've established that basis, horary astrology is the natural next step. A fundamental part of my philosophy at the Oracular School of Astrology is that all astrology is question based. And when we pick up a person's natal chart, we're asking universal questions such as who will this person be in this lifetime? Will this person be rich? What will the relationship between this person and their siblings be if they have siblings? What will the relationship between this person and their family be? And as we go around the chart from a traditional astrology perspective, we find ourselves asking these universal questions, particularly within the context of natal astrology. And for that reason, we need to have a framework within ourselves for how to interact with astrology in a more question based sort of way. And the questionary art of astrology is best encapsulated within the context of horary astrology. So that's why I teach horary astrology first, because if you understand horary astrology first, it gives you all the skills you need to be systematic in terms of your chart reading abilities, and it forces you to come to a conclusion. I think that that's one of the biggest things that's missing in astrology today. We don't really know how to come to a specific conclusion about anything because everybody is kind of afraid of saying anything with any great level of specificity. And I think that that goes back to this fact. For me, the only thing I could attribute that to is that people aren't really confident in the astrology that they're practicing, and they're not confident in a way that allows them to feel as if they genuinely want to say something concrete. And this trickles down into all aspects of astrology. It trickles down into natal astrology, where we don't find people being able to say anything concretely. It trickles into predictive astrology, which many astrologers don't even want to practice at all because they're afraid of getting it wrong. And it spans the entire astrological corpus, basically. Horary astrology forces us to confront that fear, and it forces us to be able to call a spade a spade. It forces us to say whether or not we're looking at a good chart or a bad chart, whether we're looking at good combinations or bad combinations. And when you can develop that skill within yourself of fearlessly telling the truth, because that's really what it boils down to, being fearless about saying what you see and trusting the astrology that you've learned well enough so that you can have some faith in saying what you see. When you acquire that level of fearlessness regarding speaking concretely from a chart, you can carry that into all other aspects of your astrological practice. And really, for me, there's nothing that fosters that skill more than horary astrology. And that's why we teach horary astrology first at the Oracular School of Astrology, after teaching our students the foundations of all classical astrology.
I think a lot of people don't even know what horary is,
Oi,
and
is that the truth?
they also don't know how to pronounce it.
Horary, I've heard horary.
Also, horary.
Horary. Okay.
Yeah.
Horary astrology is the astrological art of answering questions. Now, earlier I said that all astrology is question based, and I mean it, all astrology is question based. But what makes horary astrology specific is that horary astrology is specifically built around asking questions that people have in the moment. Within the astrological community, there are many pronunciations that we hear for the word horary. We hear people saying horary, we hear people saying horary, and I think those are the main two that we actually hear. One time I've heard someone say hoary astrology, which definitely isn't what we practice. We're not practicing hoary astrology. Anyway, so horary, horary astrology is the questionary art of astrology whereby any sincerely held question can be answered through an interpretation of the chart that is erected at the moment that that question is asked. So basically, if you want to know, should I marry this person, and you ask that question to an astrologer, the astrologer can pull up a chart for the moment of you asking that question so that the astrologer can give you an answer to that question. It is a very question and answer based system of astrology, which makes it so incredible because one, it forces us to get clear about our questions, but two, it forces the person who is answering the question to get very crystal clear about the answer that they're providing us. So it's a wonderful branch of astrology. It is the divinational branch of astrology. And in general, divination is the art and science of communicating with the divine via an established symbolic language. Within the context of horary astrology, our established symbolic language is the horary chart itself. Whereas within tarot, the established symbolic language in tarot are the tarot cards. The established symbolic language within runemal is the rune stones. The established symbolic language in the I Ching are the 64 hexagrams. So every system of divination is having its established symbolic language that allows the diviner to communicate with the divine and interpret the messages that they're receiving in a way that the recipient of that divination can understand it. And the same is true for horary astrology. In horary astrology, we are interpreting the signs, the symbols, and the omens within the context of a horary chart so that we can translate that as usable, tangible, practical information that people can use by which to further illuminate their path forward towards the future. Horary astrology gives us the ability to answer questions that people have in the moment and answer them in a way that's usable. I haven't really seen a quote unquote spiritual or evolutionary form of horary astrology that doesn't provide concrete, pragmatic, tangible answers. And I think that that is because that's where horary astrology works the best. Horary astrology works best when it comes to questions that have concrete implications on our lives because the information we get back from a horary chart is information that is concrete and that can be used within our 3D physical reality.